I'm June MacDonald. Welcome to the Waterloo Potter's Workshop. This is our glaze and hand building room. Today I'm going to show you how to glaze pots. This is the method that we use at the workshop, so we'll touch also on the house glazes and everything else, but first we'll start with prepping our pots. Alright, so I have a few tools out here and my pots that I want to wax. The purpose of putting wax on a pot is because when it goes into the kiln, you want to have it sit on, it's going to sit on a kiln shelf, and you don't want to have any glaze there. So anywhere that we put wax on, it's going to create a resist. So the glaze won't stick on, we'll be able to just wipe it off. So you'll see that when we come to dipping our pots in. And so this mug here, I added a pencil line around so that I could see how far I need to bring the wax to. And this is just to have a safe distance so that it's not too close to the bottom of the pot and then it's going to run and stick to a shelf. Okay? Because remember, this is the glaze is going to turn into molten glass, right? It's going to be liquid glass that then hardens into that shell that you have as a glaze. So when I'm putting the wax on, I just need a very thin layer. So this one I can just go all around the bottom, and then I'll take my brush and go around right up to, and if you want to go right over that pencil iron, you can. It's very handy having this line too, because otherwise sometimes I know when I go freeform, I go a little off. So this will make sure I'm a little bit straighter. Okay. One thing that you might want to do when you bring your pots out of the bisque kiln is you want to take a look and see, okay, are there any bits that there are either, there's a little spot here where there's a little bump of clay and I don't like it. So you can use any kind of sanding paper, and you can do that outside the workshop. If you're going to sand in the workshop, you can only use like a sanding sponge, so it's wet and it won't create a bunch of dust, because we don't want dust. And so you just get that wet and then find your spot again, and I'll just sand that off. Okay, and then once I'm done with the sanding, I'm just going to take not this sponge. I'm going to take this sponge and I make sure that I wring it out so it's not, I don't want it soaking wet. All I'm trying to do is wipe off any dust that's on here. So I don't want this pot to get too wet and then have spots where the glaze won't absorb because the pot's too wet. It can't absorb it. So we're going to take a look now at the glaze wall. Now these are all cone 6 glazes, and cone 6 is a measurement of temperature within the kiln, and that's a mid-fire temperature. So we're using mid-fire, stoneware clays and glazes, and so this is also this is kind of like decision time. How am I going to decorate my pots? What are they going to look like? All right, so let me first explain how this wall works. So you'll see at the side, down the side here, we have the names of glazes, and then along the top. And the way to read this is that when you look along here, this is the glaze that's underneath. All right, so over here we have satin matte white, and this is what it looks like with Randy's red on top. Okay, or if I come over here, we've got butter yellow, and this is shiny green on top. So some of these options, they'll look good or not. You can't be 100% sure that it's going to look exactly the way it does on these test tiles, but if you look at the clay that you have, if it's close to white clay, or it's more of a creamy clay or red, it will give you some approximations. You should always do your own testing. But it depends on where then your piece is in the kiln, how thick or thin the glaze application was. That can make a difference, and then how high the temperature the kiln got to. You know, was it closer to a 5 or was it really hot and got closer to cone 7 as opposed to in the middle right at cone 6. All right. Now you'll see that even though we have overlapped these glazes, this is not something that we encourage people to do in terms of overlapping, as in having double glaze, because then what happens is it will run. And if you get a reputation for having pots with too much glaze on them that run, people will not fire your pots because they will just end up sticking to the shelf because the glaze will run. You'll have pots ruined, etc. So I want you to have a successful glazing, and if you're putting things on the please fire me shelf, that people will be confident that yeah, you were conscientious about it and we're thinking about not having things run. So never double dip your whole pot. Never, ever, ever. You could dip the rim in, you know, about 1/3 of the way because it will still run down some in the kiln when it fires. The other thing you could do is you could brush another glaze on, so you could just add some extra interest to the surface of your pot. You could also take a sponge and just sponge a bit on, and that's not the same as covering it with the whole thing. It'll be less, so it's less likely to really run, but it will give you some nice effects. So now we're going to get started actually dipping our pots into the glaze. So I've picked up a couple of glazes and brought them out. You don't want the buckets to be too close together because I don't want to have like Randy's red spilling into the white. That would be terrible. So we'll just keep them a little bit separate. Every time you go to use the glaze, you need to give them a really good stir. Okay? So I usually give this a couple minutes of stirring, which seems like a lot, but if they've been sitting for a while, it's really worth it. And if you walk away from the glaze for like 10-15 minutes, then come back and give it another stir. So these did get some stirring up before, so I don't need to sit here for 2 minutes stirring them again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a simple dip, and I'm going to use the tongs. So with these tongs, you want to make sure that you've got a decent grip on them, but you don't want them to, so you don't want to crush it, especially if you have something really thin, you could actually break your pot. But you want to have a good grip on it, obviously, so that you don't drop it in. The easiest way to do this is just to do like a circle in and out. So I'm just going to go in like this, and actually just bring it right out. Okay? And just give me a little bit of a shake, and then I'm going to put it on the table. For this mug, I'm going to put white on the inside, and then it's going to go into the blue afterwards. When you have something like a mug or anything with a handle, it's fairly strong, but it's not super strong. So never hold it by the handle. Hold it, give yourself, have a good grip on it. All right, so I'm going to take some glaze in here and just pour it in to the top, and then gently pour it out, and I'm trying not to spill. Okay, and so I'm going to have to leave this now on the table until it's dry enough that I can do the other dip. So that's going to take at least 10 minutes. Okay, if you remember, I had poured white onto the inside and then poured the white out of this mug. So the inside will have a white glaze, and then the outside I want to have a blue glaze. So because it's a mug, it's really easy to just put my hand in, and then I just expand my fingers so that I can hold it up, and I'll just dip it in and then bring it straight up. So there's still a rim that will have to get dipped in. Once this is dried, this will take a little longer to dry. All right, so this is my mug that I have white on the inside and blue on the outside. And the rim, remember we couldn't get up right to the rim, so we're just gonna dip it in right now. So I'm just gonna hold it, put it in the top, take it right out. Okay, I definitely don't wanna hold it, I just wanna take it out. so that it doesn't get too thick. So I'm looking at this bowl that it got put into the green, and then the rim was dipped in Randy's red, and remember it's only part way, not even halfway, so like try and keep it within a third, just to be safe. All right, so now I'm taking a look at it though, and I'm noticing that I can see the tong marks. So on the inside there's a little mark there, and there's one there. They're not too bad. So usually I would do this over top of I just go over it with my finger. Once you've touched the red though, don't use the same fingers for the green. So I'm just going to use my fingernail to go over that. But you could do that, or I would go and use the metal rib and just smooth that over a little bit. On the outside though, I can see that the tong kind of slipped. So there's a bit of an indentation there. And I want to just make sure that that's filled so it doesn't show up when it comes out of the kiln. And so I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll actually just add an extra decorative touch. But I want to add something all the way around. So I'm just going to go like that. Make sure I covered the spot where the tongs had slipped. And come over a little bit more, just so there's something all the way around. And then I don't want to forget the inside. So now we're just going to clean up these globs off of the glaze. So they don't look nice when they come out of the kiln. But if we just clean them off a bit, they should come out fine. So I'm just taking this metal rib, and I'm just gently going over. So if it's just a small bit like that, I got rid of it completely. There was just a little bit there. If it's a big one, don't try and attack it all at once, because you could end up taking the whole chunk off. So I'll just come, and I'm basically just wearing it down, going over the top of it. And just gently, and I do it over a bowl of water so that I don't have dust all over the workshop, and then I have to mop up the whole place. Alright, and then if you do get a little light spot because it's scraped too much, you can take a brush, dip it in the glaze, and just touch it up. Alright. So once you have let your pots dry, you've added all the glaze that you wanted to, you need to make sure that you clean it up. So the first part is to clean up the bottom where you've got your foot and you're cleaning up off of where you had put wax. And make sure that you're generous with that line that goes up here. And again, this is all about protecting your pot, not having to clean, not making whoever's firing your pots have to clean and scrape bits of glaze off the shelf, but also helping to extend the shelf life of those shelves, because they're quite expensive, and anything we have to replace, you know, that's going to impact our costs. All right, so we're here in the basement of the Waterloo Potter's Workshop, and this is where all our electric kilns are. So I'm going to put this pot over here on the Please Fire Me shelf. These are these shelves in the middle, and so I'll just put it down. What's very important is make sure that you put with it, put your name and how to contact you, you know, either email or phone, and then put what type of firing it is. So in this case, it's going to be cone 6. So it's a little triangle and cone 6, and that means it's a glaze. And if you want to be super clear, you can write glaze. If it was a bisque, I would write cone 06, okay, because that's a much lower temperature, right? But cone 6 glaze, June, and it's junemacdonald@gmail.com. And so I will put that inside my pot. If I have more than one pot, I'm going to put a piece of paper in every single one, because you don't know whoever's going to be firing how much room they really have. And if you are in a hurry or anxious, then get your eyes on the kiln calendar and contact whoever's going to be firing and ask people, hey, would you be able to fit this in, just to make sure that you get your piece in if you need it in a hurry. Thanks for joining me glazing today. Our pots have been put downstairs on the Please Fire Me shelf, or you can put them upstairs with your name and a date till they're ready to get fired. And now, of course, we have to clean up because we're a co-op, and anytime you come in and work, it's pretty annoying if someone's left a mess, right? But it's pretty awesome when it's perfectly clean and you can just get to work. So that's what we're going to do.